Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and we're in the first week of the EB01 meta here in North America, and because of that we have a good amount of data and tournament results that I want to go over and just kind of share my thoughts, what the meta looks like right now, and if there might be any different trends that I expect in the next couple weeks. So that's the plan for the day, and let's jump on into it. And real quick before we do, Sleeve Chief, one of our sponsors, is doing their anniversary sale where you get 20% off their entire website. Additionally, if you use my link and my coupon code, the Eggman, you get an additional 5% on top of that. So they've got quite the good deal for all their products on this one. They obviously do a bunch of sleeves, and they've been adding a bunch of one-piece product for this one as well. So it's kind of their new line of products for sleeves and everything else. They do make deck boxes, play mats, and a bunch of other accessories, and the ones I recommend this time are the Odin's Wrath sleeves. These are the Yamato one. They look really nice, and they just honestly look great. So make sure to check them out. They got a lot of products for One Piece right now, and let's jump into the video. All right, to start us off, we have TCG Matchmaking's weekly power rankings. And if you guys have been watching my live streams, you know that I've been doing a lot of ranked games on TCG Matchmaking. And if you don't know who they are in the community. They let you play against other people, and you get like an MMR, and you kind of get, but they also track all the data for it. So which leaders people are using, the win rates, and specific other things. So on their Patreon, they do have like free articles where they release like these weekly power rankings as well. But then if you support them on Patreon, you get additional access to, like on OPO Bounty, to have some more stats. So this is just a screenshot. You get an entire like page and kind of grid match it for anything you want. So you guys can check out a little bit. It is Patreon locked, so I'm not going to go over their data for them. But when I went over, it was a really great resource and highly recommend it. So they also have some meta stuff. They're adding deck list as well, specifically for this too. And I think it's a really good resource for anyone who wants this, and for someone who's been doing this card game stuff for a really long time. It is just invaluable what a resource this is. I've never been able to have like pure data for what's the percentage of like a leader against another leader. It's always had to been my personal opinion or like tournament results, nothing like concrete of like 1,000 games if this mismatch, you know, who would win more times than not kind of thing. So I think that's something that is really invaluable. And make sure to check out their Patreon and their Discord, which I'm going to link both in the description below. So, but going over their power rankings, we do have our highest win rate is Sakazuki with a 56.6, and having not the most amount of matches for this one. I think seeing like a bunch of people are on Trafalgar Law right now, especially because it is like the newer version, and, you know, the newer deck on the blocks. I know a lot more people are trying it out because of that, but just has a really good win rate as well, pretty similar to Sakazuki. And if we're taking a little bit of a peek of some of the spread here, we can see that Law has a pretty good matchup into Sakazuki, but has a little bit of a rough one into Gecko Moria. Gecko Moria, I think, is in a really good spot. Also, like, technically all of its matches are in the green, but it looks like most of them are just like even or a little bit above even, instead of anything too drastic, right? Like Sakazuki has like some drastically good matchups into like a Nell and Katakuri from what we can see, but I think that's something that's important, where Sakazuki is probably like a little bit more polarizing for some of its matchups, but because of that too, it just always has like the better range for wins there. We also have Uta having a 53%, Anel having a 52%, kind of more play from this one with 16,000 games, which with, you know, it did get a good amount of support. People are looking at it more, especially with OPO7 coming out. We have Katakuri, which had, I think, like almost the third, but pretty much tied for second amount of matches with Gecko Moria, but just having an abysmal win rate with that, with 51.4. I really did not expect the drop off for Katakuri to happen so much between Star Deck 13 and EB01, but it definitely has, which is really interesting to see, especially with, you know, Yellow getting, I think, a good amount of generic power, and him being part of that, but not getting there. You know, I think Anel has been just more popular in general too, but it is just interesting because that changed there. And then we have Newgate, just a paltry 51%, but not a lot of people are on it. I think we can see that Newgate has some good matchups into like Sakazuki specifically at times, but not enough for some of the other matches. And then we have Yamato, which has just dropped down to like a 48.3%. So again, I think Yamato was at the beginning of the meta was pretty strong and consistent, but It is a yellow deck. It is kind of swingy, but sometimes it swings in your favor highly, and you get a lot of value from it too. So those are kind of the big ones I'm going to talk about. If you guys want more detailed data, make sure to check out their Patreon. And again, if you do become a patron to them, you do get all of this page here and some others for their statistics, and they're still working on more. So highly recommend it. All right, last for the data before we go into the tournament results, we got the underdogs. These were the 3 leaders that had positive win rates that they didn't go over their power rankings. I just want to mention real quick. So Trafalgar Law, red and green, had about 1,000 games with a 54.6. And then also Eustace Kid with only about 604 games, but with a 52.8. Both these decks got a good amount of support in EB01, and I know Supernovas, like green Supernovas specifically, do get a little bit more support right now too. So that's something that's impactful. And I think people are testing for it. I do think both of them get hit real hard by Sakazuki and Gecko Moria specifically, just because they do have the removal for their bigger threats. Specifically Sakazuki, like Moria maybe a little bit less so, but Sakazuki specifically is a really rough matchup for these two. If that didn't exist in the meta, I think both of these could have a real good chance to be part of the meta as is. And I think, again, like we do have positive win rates for these leaders too, but they're also not at like the higher level. So I think that's also the thing I want to mention too, is that when more people are on this list, it means that they're good players, but there's also really bad players who are on the list too, right? So I think people who are on Law or Kid right now are more people who previously played them in OPO1 meta or OPO2 or whatever, and then they're just committed to bringing it back, so they have a higher than average skill level. So that's kind of like what my bias and what the data might look like for those two. And then Zoro's kind of the same thing. We can see that we have way more people on this with almost 2,000 games with it. It has a 50% win rate. It does have some polarizing matchups too, but it's still kind of viable, and you can maybe see one pop up here and there. So, but I did want to mention that these 3, again, technically had a positive win rate. I want to go over them real quick. All right, now into the tournament data. We did have 4 big events in the last week. One had a 386 cap, 2 had 512 caps, and 1 had a 1024 cap. So the 386 cap, we have a top 8 for this, and then the 512 we had 2 16 tops, and then the 1024 we had a 32 top. So these are what the pie charts look like real quick. And then we did have 2 Sakazukis and 2 Morias win the 4 events that we had. So and generally speaking, those were the most common in those top, not only first place, but like top 4 and X1 categories were mostly Sakazukis and Gecko Morias from what it is. If you want to see any of the data specifically, all of these events with all the deck lists are on my website, Eggman Events, which you can check out in the description as well. But going over just like topping leaders in general, we did have 27 Sakazuki, 17 Gecko Moria, 8 Star Deck 10 Law, 8 Anel, 4 Newgate, 3 Star Deck 11 Uta, 3 of the Star Deck 13 Luffy, 1 Katakuri, and 1 Yamato. So previously, I'd say that like at the beginning of OPO6, it was Sakazuki, Moria, and also Katakuri for like the 67% to 75% of what the meta was looking like. And right now we have Sakazuki still doing very, very well, and Moria, so they're taking about 2/3 by themselves. And then we do have like I think Anel and Law adding like another almost like a quarter of the meta as is, and then just a couple of hopefuls from there. So I think that's somewhat impactful for it. It just kind of shows the strength of these leaders in a lot of ways. And I do think like Law is probably a little bit underrepresented, only because it's like a newer deck and it's a more complex deck, kind of like how Sakazuki is, where at the beginning of the meta in OPO6, Sakazuki wasn't doing really well. It wasn't topping it was still topping, but it wasn't winning, and it wasn't as consistent as it is right now. And I think it's mostly just people figuring out what's the optimal plays for Star Deck 10 Law, what the builds look like. And while people are figuring that out, I think it's going to be a little bit underrepresented, but I expect as we get deeper into EB01, that Star Deck 10 Law increases in the next couple weeks. So that's the data that we have for this one. And let's go to the updated tier list. All right, and here's the tier list that I made going into EB01. So this was before we had anything. I did do some testing, and obviously I had some results from Japan. So this was, I'd say, moderately accurate for what it was. I think I did have a couple misses. And specifically, I think I overranked how good Katakuri was going to be. With mostly, I think the reason for that one is Katakuri was doing really good. It was doing really good in most of OPO6 before this, and I didn't think that Star Deck, I felt like Yellow only got better cards, right? but that was not the case for Katakuri specifically. I think Enel has just proven itself as like the better yellow leader in this format in general, and I think it's mostly because also like Red Purple Law is a bit of a tough matchup for Katakuri as well. I think Enel sometimes has a chance to beat it with just being able to have like that one life continuously and help you from there. Obviously, like Yamato, and if is able to like clear one of their bodies and helps you get that kind of removal too. So I think that's part of what this deck looks like. So, but the new tier list I have for this one, I did add kind of like this tier 2 in the middle here for this one. So generally, you know, I only had 4 spots. I had 1. So generally tier 1's here. I almost want to make like, instead like put Law here based on what this is, but I still have faith that it's just going to continue to get better and better throughout this one. I still think Enel is good, but I think it's like a little bit like, it's like this is like the top of 1.5 for sure, and this is the bottom of tier 1. So like these could be like a 1.25 if you really want to get down into it, but I think both these are very, very good leaders. Moria and Sakazuki are just gonna, I think, run through the rest of the format pretty easily. Then we also have Uta, Whitebeard, and then Black Yellow Luffy. Honestly, like Black Yellow Luffy's kind of always been like suboptimal, I think, from what it is. It's obviously really dependent on decks that can remove the Sabo blocker. So I think Sakazuki has a good matchup into it. I think Trafalgar Law has a good matchup to it. I think that like the Uta, if you set up Eustace Kid, that we don't have a really great way to remove it as Luffy. So I think those are all pretty impactful for the deck in general. Sometimes it still goes off, and I do like what the deck does, but I don't think it's quite there still, which is kind of unfortunate. Tier 2, we had Katakuri. I'm putting that at the top there, Yamato, and I'm putting Nami just because Nami can almost always find a way. So I know a lot of people have been testing it, and it does do kind of good. I think Trafalgar Law is just a really good deck against it too, so it might have a bit of a tricky time setting up, but I think you can have a really good matchup into something like a Nell, which is a little bit slower, and I think that's great for the deck too. So we're putting it there. Viable potential, we had Law and Eustace Kid, but I'm adding Zoro here too for the potential part. I'm also putting a green purple Dofi at the end. Just because I've seen some builds and I've seen people test it a little bit more, so I think it does have potential, but I'm not quite in that tier 2 spot for it, and then likely won't top. I put all of the EB01 leaders. I don't think they're going to get there, unfortunately, and I kept Sabo here. I got a little bit of flack for this one. Like if for comments, I think Katakuri was that, and then also Sabo, where a lot of people are like, oh no, Sabo has a chance, and I do want to reiterate. I think that or not sorry, not Sabo, Ace has a chance. I think Ace is still really cool, and I think that he gets better with OP07 and with OP08, but just with the card pool that exists for him right now, I don't see it. I don't see him getting the support that he needs. So that's why I kind of put him down there. But regardless, like both these two could probably be lumped to one together. But I don't want to like pick on these ones generically, but I do kind of want to just highlight that I think the EB01 leaders are really neat, but they're just not like there. They just kind of merge two different archetypes or two different colors of archetypes for some of these decks, which is really cool, but they weren't kind of built to be kind of put together. And so because of that, they're just not at like their peak that they could be, if that makes sense. If you have a multicolor leader that comes out with an archetype, they generally go hand in hand, but with these ones kind of putting red and green Odin stuff or Wano stuff together, some of the synergies there, but some of it's really not. So I don't know. I'm just going to put them there for now. But that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, if you want any of the data, I have links to everything from my own website to TCG Matchmaking. So you guys can check that out for your own if you want to. And I'm looking forward to see how EB01 changes for the next couple weeks as well. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.